I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing because I need to finally say it out loud. I built that place. And they took it like I was the dishwasher, not the one who kept it alive for a decade. My name's Claire Monroe. I'm 35, based in Austin, and for most of my adult life, I poured every ounce of myself into my family's restaurant, Monroe's Smokehouse. The name's a legacy in this town. People recognize it like a landmark. Hell, some folks even get married there. They know the ribs, the cornbread, the pit-smoked brisket that melts in your mouth. What they don't know? It was me. Not my dad, not my brother Jake. Me. Let me rewind just a bit. My dad, Earl Monroe, started the place back in the 80s. He was a force. Loud, proud, the kind of guy who could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves. But after his stroke in 2015, he had to slow down. That's when I stepped in full-time. I left my job in Dallas, sold my car, broke my lease, and came back home with a duffel bag and a promise. I'll keep this place running until you're back on your feet. Thing is, he never really came back. Not mentally, not emotionally. He sat in the back office most days, watching sports highlights and scribbling in his leather notebook. And I didn't mind. I wanted him to rest. I ran that place like my name was on the mortgage. Staff schedules, vendor contracts, redesigning the kitchen flow, creating a vegan BBQ line that, ironically, became our biggest seller with tourists. I was putting in 80-hour weeks while Dad napped behind a two-way mirror. And Jake? He was in Tampa, losing money on a chain of failed juice bars and cheating on his wife. No one heard from him for 4 years. Then, out of the blue last winter, he shows up with a duffel bag of his own. No job, no wife, no plan. Dad gives him a key and a title. Co-owner. Like this was Monopoly, and he just landed on Park Place with a grin. I swallowed it. Told myself he's family, maybe he'll step up. But deep down, I knew better. Fast forward to 3 months ago. We threw a big bash for Dad's 70th. Rented out the back patio, brought in live blues music, invited half the damn city. I smoked pork shoulders all day, prepped the cornbread myself, decorated the tables with vintage photos of Dad in his glory days. When the band took a break, Jake taps a glass and hands Dad the mic. And that's when it happened. Dad leans into the mic, grinning like a game show host, and says, "I just want to thank my son Jake for stepping up like a real man and helping carry this family business forward. It's good to know Monroe's will stay in strong hands." That's it. Nothing about me, not a word. No mention of the years I kept it afloat. No nod to the fact that I'd just taken us through our highest quarter on record. No thanks for literally putting my life on pause for him. People clapped. Some looked my way, confused. I smiled, tight, frozen, but I swear to God I felt something snap in my chest. Not break, just snap, like a cable under too much tension. I didn't say a word that night. I served brisket until midnight, cleaned the kitchen myself, went home and didn't speak to either of them for 2 weeks. Then I got the envelope. It came in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled in Dad's handwriting. I opened it in the parking lot of H-E-B, sitting in my car with the AC blasting. Inside was a copy of a signed deed. Monroe's Smokehouse was now legally owned by Earl and Jake Monroe. No mention of me. No buyout offer. No explanation. Just a line in pen under Jake's name. Successor. I stared at it until my hands went numb. Then I turned the key in the ignition, backed out, and drove straight to a place I hadn't been in years. The empty storage unit where I kept all my original recipes, layouts, and the backup vendor contracts. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. I sat in the driver's seat of my beat-up Tacoma, parked outside the old storage unit I hadn't touched in 6 years. The sun was bleeding out behind the hills, casting this sickly gold glow over everything. But I couldn't see it. I was staring at the deed in my lap, my hands shaking so bad I couldn't unfold the damn thing properly. Jake was now listed as successor and majority owner. My name wasn't even on the operating agreement anymore. I don't know if you've ever had your entire sense of self yanked out from under you by people who share your blood. but I wouldn't wish it on anyone. That restaurant was my life. I had bled into that building. Literally. Cut my hands prepping meat at 5 a.m. Burned my arm on the smoker, reaching for brisket I should have let rest. I stayed up on the books until 2 a.m. Paid vendors out of my personal checking when cash flow got tight. Even skipped rent one winter so we could afford new walk-in coolers. Jake? Jake once tried to order gluten-free ribs. Let that sink in. Anyway, back to the storage unit. I rolled up the garage-style door and was hit with that familiar dusty smell. Metal shelves lined with binders, boxes of menus, old POS systems, and folders labeled vendor emergency contacts. In the back was the real gold. 2 fireproof boxes I hadn't touched in years. Inside were my original recipe notebooks, handwritten, stained with sauce, annotated with years of tweaks and customer notes. Also inside, employee training manuals I built from scratch, contracts I'd negotiated myself, catering client lists, and the spreadsheets that tracked our margins month by month. That night, I made a decision. If they were going to treat me like I didn't exist, I'd make sure they understood exactly what that meant. I didn't go to the restaurant the next day. Or the next. I started forwarding emails to Jake. I let inventory run low. The health inspection was due in 3 weeks. I said nothing. I stopped answering staff calls, and one by one, the people I trained started texting me privately. You okay? Something's up with Jake. Place feels weird without you. I wasn't okay, but I was focused. I cashed out the catering deposit I'd booked under my name. I met with an attorney who used to eat at Monroe's every Thursday and knew exactly how to keep things quiet. I filed a new LLC under a different name and signed a lease on a food truck that had been sitting behind a gas station just outside town. Then I made 2 phone calls. One to Rico, our head pitmaster, who didn't hesitate when I said, "I've got a new plan, and I need you." The second to Sophia, our event coordinator, who said, "I've been waiting for this call." By the end of the week, 6 of my 12 original staff had quietly walked from Monroe's. Jake didn't notice right away. He was too busy doing media stuff, which mostly meant flexing on Instagram like he'd earned the damn grease under his fingernails. But I wasn't flexing. I was building. Fast. I named my food truck Burnt Offerings. A little biblical, a little petty. I parked it just 2 blocks from Monroe's by a strip of vintage shops and breweries that saw a ton of foot traffic. Soft launch, no press, just a chalkboard sign and word of mouth. We sold out in 3 hours. People hugged me. One woman cried. Some said, "I thought you closed down." Nope, just relocated. And no, I didn't mention Monroe's. I didn't have to. But the real twist came when Sophia called me 2 weeks before the Texas BBQ Heritage Festival, our biggest event of the year. "Jake registered Monroe's for the festival," she said, "but you'll never guess where they put his booth." "Where?" "Right across from yours." I swear I could hear Karma laughing through the phone. But it gets better. The vendor list for the festival? It includes contact info for all buyers, food critics, and partners attending. Sophia forwarded me the PDF, and right there, under confirmed attendees, was a name I hadn't seen in years. Chef Marla Torres, executive buyer, Iron Circle Hospitality. She was the woman who tried to buy Monroe's 7 years ago. Dad turned her down flat. Said we don't sell out to corporate types. But me? I wasn't Dad. And I had just one thing left to sell. I didn't sleep the night before the festival. Not a wink. I lay on the little pull-out cot inside my food truck, staring at the aluminum ceiling, mentally running through everything that could go wrong. The smoker could stall. The sauce might burn. Maybe Jake would show up drunk and throw a tantrum. Maybe nobody would come to our line at all. But mostly I was picturing my dad's face, what he might say if he saw me across from Monroe's booth, holding tongs like a weapon and smiling like I hadn't just been gutted by him and Jake a few months earlier. Festival day hit like a lightning bolt. Austin heat, thick and brutal, baking the pavement by 9 a.m. We were already sweating before the smoker even fired up. Rico was focused and calm, like always. Sophia had a clipboard in one hand, earpiece in the other, barking at volunteers like a general at war. By 10:30, our line was stretching past 3 booths. At 11:15, Jake finally showed up. I saw him from across the lot. Sunglasses, pressed polo, the Monroe's apron tied over khakis like some parody of a pitmaster. He did this dramatic double take when he spotted burnt offerings, and then just stood there, staring, mouth open like a guy who just found out the house he sold for cheap was sitting on oil. He didn't come over. He didn't have to. I saw the way his line stalled, how customers peeked at our chalkboard menu and slipped away from his booth with guilty little shrugs. One by one, I watched familiar faces. Couples who used to sit at table 7, moms who came in every Sunday after church, slide over to my line and whisper, "You're Claire, right?" "Yeah. I'm Claire. I'm the one who made the ribs you still talk about. I'm the one who got written out of the story but kept the soul of it." By mid-afternoon, Monroe's ran out of brisket. Someone forgot to restock. Jake blamed the new staff. I overheard him yelling at a kid who couldn't have been more than 19. The crowd thinned. He sat down behind the booth, sweating and red-faced, texting furiously while our tip jar filled up so fast we had to dump it twice. But nothing prepared me for what happened around 3:45 p.m. A woman in sunglasses and a sharp navy blazer stepped up to my truck. Chef Marla Torres. I hadn't seen her since I was 26, standing behind Dad while he shut her down cold. Told her we don't need outsider money. She took off her shades and smiled. "So, you were the brains behind Monroe's." I nodded, swallowed, tried to say something clever, but all I managed was, "Welcome to Burnt Offerings." She ordered a full sampler plate, took her time eating in silence beside the truck, then came back to the window. "This is the best smoked jackfruit I've had in Texas. The brisket's damn near poetry. And your setup? Clean, efficient, scalable." I blinked. Thank you?" She handed me a card. "If you're ever interested in something bigger, I have a standing offer. Full creative control, equity, your name on the building." I just stood there, frozen. Not because I didn't want it, but because I realized in that moment, I didn't need their name anymore. Not Monroe's, not Jake's, not even my dad's. I had my own, and it was finally loud enough to carry. But just as I slipped the card into my apron, Sophia came running toward the truck, her face pale. "Claire?" she said, breathless. "I just got a call from Becca, Jake's ex. Your dad collapsed. They think it was another stroke. He's being taken to St. David's." Time stopped. For real this time. I looked down at the card in my apron, then at the crowd still waiting for food, then at Sophia. And I felt that snap again. Not of rage this time, but of something older, something softer. He was still my dad. The same man who taught me how to tie an apron, who made me taste test dry rubs until I got the blend right, who, even in his flawed, loud, dismissive way, once believed he was building something that would carry on after him. And now, he might not wake up. I don't know if you've ever spent years trying to prove yourself to someone who just couldn't see you, who chose not to. And then right when you finally start to stand on your own, they fall. And suddenly the anger doesn't fit as clean as it used to. If you've been through something like that, if someone you loved once made you invisible, I'd like to hear your story. Because standing out here now, with my own name finally on something real, I still find myself looking back and wondering if any of it, any of the pain, meant something to them at all. I didn't go to the hospital. Not right away. The second Sophia told me he collapsed, I felt it. This jolt of guilt rising in my throat like acid. But I didn't move. I just stood there behind the food truck, the card from Chef Torres still warm in my pocket, and watched as customers laughed, ate, and carried on like nothing had cracked in the world behind me. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I stayed at Rico's spare room, flipping between regret and rage, picturing my dad hooked up to wires and Jake pacing the hallway like some tragic hero. I imagined the two of them spinning a whole new story without me again. And for a second, I almost believed it was what I deserved. But the next morning, a package showed up at my truck. No note, no return address. Just my name on a sticky note in blocky handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. Inside, a weathered shoebox. And when I opened it, I swear, my knees gave out. There were old Polaroids. Me in the kitchen at age 9, holding a ladle twice the size of my face. Me and Dad covered in flour. My first recipe notebook, the one I thought I'd lost in the 2012 grease fire. At the bottom of the box was a letter. It wasn't recent. It was dated 8 years ago, written in my dad's handwriting. Shaky, but unmistakable. Claire, I'm not good at saying things. I know I screw it up, but I see what you're doing. And I don't know how to say it without sounding small, but I'm proud of you. This place wouldn't still be standing without you. I know that. I don't always know how to let go of being the guy who built it. I want you to know that if someday I can't run this thing anymore, it should be yours. You've earned it 10 times over. I read it 3 times. Then I threw up. It hit me like a gut punch. This man had seen me. At least once. At least then. But instead of handing me the reins like he promised, he handed them to Jake. And now I was holding proof that he'd known better all along. Why didn't he give this to me? Why did he let it get this far? I spent the rest of that day in a fog. Angry, raw, but clear. If the world was going to keep pretending Jake built the house, I was going to show them who poured the damn concrete. 3 days later, I called Chef Torres. We met for coffee. And I showed her everything. My menus, brand plan, vendor contracts, sustainability model, projected margins. She didn't blink. I want burnt offerings. The whole thing. Your voice, your food, your story. But I want your name on the flagship. Not Monroe. You. I shook her hand that day. Then I did something wild. I walked into Monroe's. The door creaked like it knew it wasn't mine anymore. Jake was behind the counter, fake smiling at a couple in gym clothes. He froze when he saw me. I walked up, dropped the letter on the counter, and said, "You might want to read this before the lawyers call." He stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. I turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "By the way," I said, loud enough for the lunch crowd to hear, "Chef Marla Torres just bought burnt offerings. We're opening a flagship in East Austin next spring." His face drained so fast I thought he'd pass out. But I wasn't done. "And she's naming it Claire's, not Monroe's, just mine." And here's the twist. Later that night, Becca, Jake's ex-wife, messaged me out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in years, but her message just said, "You should know something. That letter you found? Earl gave it to Jake a few years ago. Said to pass it along to you whenever the time was right. Jake kept it. Said you weren't ready." I stared at the screen for a full minute before I felt anything. Then I laughed. And then I cried so hard I thought my ribs would crack. He kept it. All these years, I thought I was invisible. Turns out I was just blocked. If you've ever had someone try to erase you from your own story, if you've been told to be patient while watching your work get handed off to someone louder, less capable, just more convenient, I want you to know, you're not crazy. You're not too emotional. You're not asking for too much. You were just never supposed to shrink to fit them. A month after the festival, the official press release dropped. Claire's Smokehouse, a new flagship restaurant backed by Iron Circle Hospitality, opening spring next year in East Austin. My face was on it. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's helper. Just me, Claire Monroe, executive chef, owner, visionary. I thought that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. Jake called 2 days later, sounding like he'd swallowed gravel. "Dad's back home. You should come by. He's not saying much." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe part of me still needed to see it, to close the loop. So I went. Monroe's was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no scent of mesquite wood, no laughter in the booths. Just the echo of a place hollowed out from the inside. Most of the staff had either walked or been fired. The Google reviews had tanked. And the front counter? It had dust on it. Dust. I walked into the office where Dad sat in his recliner, the same one I used to nap in during prep nights back when I was 16. His body looked smaller, paler, but his eyes were sharp. He tried to stand when I entered. I shook my head. Don't. He sank back, shoulders sagging under years of pride and, finally, regret. You didn't come to the hospital, he said quietly. No, I said. But I came now, because I want you to hear this straight. I sat across from him, reached into my bag, and pulled out two things. The partnership agreement from Iron Circle, and a framed photo. One I found recently, buried in an old file box. Me, age 12, holding a ribbon from a chili cook-off. Dad behind me, smiling like he knew I had it in me. You had your chance to build with me, I said, steady and clear. Instead, you built around me. And now it's mine. He didn't argue, didn't even blink. Just looked at the photo, then at the document, then back at me. I read your name in the papers, he said. It's a good name. That was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. But the justice? That came a week later. I got a call from our old accountant. Turns out Jake had been misusing vendor funds, funneling deposits into a consulting business he created under a shell LLC. The city caught wind of it during a tax audit. Monroe's got flagged. Ironically, my absence had triggered the review, because their books looked too sloppy after I left. Within 3 weeks, the health department shut the place down for compliance issues. Dad didn't fight it. Jake tried, but once the investors pulled out, he was left sitting in bankruptcy court alone, sweating through his suit like a busted balloon. I didn't celebrate. Not really. It wasn't revenge that filled me up that day. It was the calm that comes when you no longer owe anyone your silence. 6 months later, I stood outside Claire's, holding a pair of gold-plated tongs, about to cut the ceremonial ribbon. Behind me were the people who stuck by me. In front of me were strangers who had only ever known me by one name. Mine. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone's daughter. I felt like someone's damn inspiration. Sometimes justice doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence, and them watching you thrive where they tried to bury you. What I've learned? You don't need to scream to prove your worth. You just need to keep building where they can't knock it down. And if you've ever been erased, by family, by bosses, by people who should have lifted you up instead of climbing over you, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if this hit something inside you, stick around. There's more we're not done saying yet.